That's cool as a moose, as they say. Well, I do send my regrets, Daisy May did not make it today. It wasn't muddy enough. But welcome to our second class on birds and birding and the awesome nature of bird migration. This was going to be my splash slide and have you walk through identifying this, but we've got such a nice picture show that Wayne prepared for us that I'm going to defer to that. Wayne was totally unanticipated, totally unarranged, and totally great. So I can't wait to do more about it. Again, this is a collaborative effort between the Center for Environment Society and Chesapeake Forum. And as I said originally, I was going to just go through some of our locations, but rather than do that, I'm going to go and defer to the slideshow, and we're going to see what quiz time birds are going to have, because Wayne is not a birder either, and freely admits it, and so we really have a chance to. Not all of these guys are named, and he calls it the year-end favorite show. I'm not going to do them all. I'm going to pick through, but give you a chance to get an idea of what they are. You all know that?
Well, it's not a golden finch.
Here it is.
Oh, it is. See, I knew that.
Full name American goldfinch. This is a male in breeding plumage, and that's what he should look like soon if you've still got them coming to your feeders by any chance.
But his wings are black.
The wings are black, yeah, you can't see them here. And there may be a slide later you'll have a chance to have a look at PJ, bird license. But this is the male.
Is there any way that these can be labeled? So I can practice my birds?
They can be, but these are wings proprietary things, so he has to do a package.
Yeah, that's right. You gotta get it right.
We can work on that.
Oh, good.
There you go. Here's one, it's the only picture I think Wayne got of this. We had fleeting looks at it. It's smaller. We saw it down at Bear Swamp.
First trip.
Bear Swamp would be what, our second or third?
First one was-
Dandy.
Wait, don't argue that. Oh, come on, speak up.
Go ahead.
Come on, we gotta.
Orange and black, a study in orange and black.
I guess a red star.
That's the American red star. There you go. Well done. I cheated, I guess. That was,
2 points, honey.
Really?
yeah, Bear Swamp was our third trip. And by the way, on our trips, I was going through a number of species. The whole idea was not to see all the birds and everything, like a bird club trip would do. We averaged about 28 or so species per trip, with the one exception, the last trip. We doubled that. And with, unfortunately, a lot of unfamiliar birds, but we do our best. Anyway, that's the American red star. Here's another picture of that bird flying out over yes, it's the barn swallow. It's our only fork-tailed swallow in the east, and this probably was taken at, I don't know if it was a white farm, it was the other farm, Point Pleasant. Yeah.
What did you say it was?
Barn swallow,
No, where did you say we saw it?
Point Pleasant.
Yeah.
Over that pond, but also they're nesting there now. There's a whole
No,
barn
sorry.
full of.
I'm sorry for that.
Yeah.
How this mix with us swifts?
Swallows and swifts are not that related, although they have similar habits. They feed while flying, on the wing, as we say. Swifts are more closely related to hummingbirds. But in some old little field guides, you'll see the swifts and the swallows put together just because they're often insect feeders that feed in the air. But swifts have this very short humerus, this very short upper arm bone, and longer wings, and that enables them to flap their wings very fast. Before slow motion cameras came into being, people actually thought they flapped their wings alternate. But that's shown to be definitely not the truth. But they're related to hummingbirds in that sense. They're not that closely related, but they all tend to migrate at about the same time. So when the swifts first arrived, there would be thrown out hummingbirds here in the east are likely to be here as well, or vice versa. Remember that guy? Yeah, that's the bar now. Yeah, that's from Bear Swamp.
Yeah.
And That, there was the tree was kind of hiding behind it. Some people had trouble seeing through, but wasn't being cooperative.
But then he buzzed us.
Yeah, nice looking, great picture. Well, this was also,
Oh, this is my favorite, yes.
bird behaves like a nuthatch,
Uh-huh.
but it ain't.
It's a black and white warbler.
That's the black and white warbler. And there's no other color to work confusion with. This happens to be, the picture does show it. This is a male. The male has this little black mask here. The female is plain face. Otherwise, they would pretty much the same.
I think it's like a downy,
Woodpecker?
woodpecker because it goes up and down sometimes.
Right, but a downy woodpecker always goes up the tree straight up, never head first. Whereas a nuthatch will go up or down anyway, and woodpeckers use their tails as props. So they hitch up the tree that way. Nuthatch does not. And this bird behaves like a nuthatch, and unlike many warblers, it tends not to feed out on the ends of branches. It tends to feed in along the larger limbs of the trunk. And this is a neat picture because it shows its nuthatch-like behavior, actually being able to go upside down, which they often do.
Yeah, you see that.
Tufted tit, that's right. If you've got feeders, this is a common feeder bird. There are several other titmice in the west, but this is our only eastern species. It has a little bit of rufous rusty on the underbelly in most cases. The young should be showing up now pretty soon, and they'll look a lot more plain-faced. But otherwise, they look something like the adults, and they tend not to have any of the other color.
They still have a crown?
Yes, they'll have crests as well, but much smaller. They'll look tiny compared to this guy.
That's a great picture with the pine tree.
Oh, these pictures are just
Yeah, beautiful.
all
Oh,
right.
I know, the bubblegum like still.
Yes, it's a full one line still. What more can I say? VGST. Blackneck still. They do nest on Poplar Island, I believe. So you guys go in there on Monday, might ask about whether they're having nests. Very tall shorebird. You only see about half of his legs there. Very pink bubblegum color. Nice contrasting black and white. We got this guy over at Bombay Hook. Also at Bombay Hook, I think. Yeah.
Even Wayne knew what it was.
Wait, did he name it?
I don't know why they call it.
It was identified
I don't know why they call it yellow legs, but this is not quite as tall as this still, but otherwise it's kind of built the same way. The picture does show, it's a nice side view, does show the slight upturn. Yeah, you don't have to quite make it up, but in a lesser, the bill will be straighter and shorter. But also with yellow legs. We didn't get good looks at lessers at all, lesser yellow legs. Great compare the swan that is around here in the summer is a no-no swan, right?
Mute.
Yeah, this is the mute, right, mute swan, yellow bill, black face, sometimes noticeable knob at the base of the
But really pretty now. I mean, it's too bad they have to be annoying.
Everybody likes, this is
Yeah,
the
but
swan,
pretty.
this is the swan of Hans Christian Andersen's ugly
Right.
duckling,
Yeah.
because they are ugly and gray when they're small. Our thunder swan would have a straighter neck, more horizontal bill, and the bill would not be orange, it would be mainly black with a little yellow fleck in front of the eye. That's a winter bird here, and fairly common. If you go to Blackwater in the wintertime, you probably see lots of them.
To the heron, the lesser heron, not that, the one before.
That's still a great bird, yeah. It's still a great bird.
But they color, did you touch up the color? Did you do a little bit of highlighting?
I don't think so. I mean, the sun was right out.
Yeah, that looks pretty good.
Oh, man, that's just, wow.
And these birds are in breeding plumage, and they have these long egrets, as they call them, plumes that along the back, which is true of a lot of the herons. The white herons also have that. Okay. Noisy, saw him over at Miss Killian.
What is it again? Oh, you guys can remember it had the white thing in that.
Yeah, very dull when it's sitting down.
Beautiful.
Will it?
Oh, will it?
Will it?
Will it? Yeah. Noisy, real abundant up in the southern New Jersey marshes. Here's one of the white herons. This one has a yellow bill, see? And you can not see anything of the feet. Look dark in the picture. And there are the ibex plumes that or almost the demise of the bird. This is which one? This probably was taken at
Snowy.
Bombay.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, this is the gray. Snowy has a dark.
Oh.
Okay. It's also smaller, but you can't compare it. And he's got snowy here somewhere. It's the New Valley, the gray monks. That was a boat-tailed grackle. Okay. Big long tail.
Yeah,
Okay.
boat tail, right.
Yeah.
They are in our
A southern grackle, really, we do get it up at Bombay Hook, we get it at Ocean City occasionally, in southern Somerset County, southern, on this side of the bay at least. Bigger than the regular grackle, very different calls. Okay, there's the national emblem. Beginning to hold a bit, see these new feathers? Again, these big birds tend to move, if you will, in balance so that they can continue to fly while they do this. Vultures do the same thing. So you'll see feathers on equivalent feathers on either side of the wing being lost, and then the humans go at the same rate. We saw these. There was a little pod of them at Bombay Hook, and it's our common summer tern. It's not the common tern. That's a real name. But it is a common summer tern here. Actually, you get a few all year. Has a black patch over the eye. These are immatures or possibly first-year birds from last year that haven't acquired the typical tern of the black cap. These are Forster's tern. Okay, they're the ones you're most likely to see in Talbot County and along the Choptank River up until August or September. And we get a few common terns that are breeding in Poplar Island that will start to show up. This is a big tern. Okay, big, powerful wing beats for a tern. Most terns you think of flurry.
Was he getting ready to dive?
He might be, it's hard to tell in that picture, but it's a great picture because it also shows off the bill, blood red. World's largest tern.
That's a Caspian.
Caspian, this is the Caspian tern. We saw that, a couple of them fly by over at Bombay Hook. Also at Bombay Hook,
The band,
yes,
single.
we all got figured out what bands I was talking about. Right?
You must finally.
We finally jumped on the bandwagon. This bird, again, with the picture, you can't see relative size, but relative to the other banded bird like it, it's about half the size. Okay. This is, anybody,
Doesn't over.
you got Clover right?
Yeah, that's the.
Semi-palmated, that's semi-palmated clover. Again, clovers are fairly easy. If you see shorebirds that walk, stop, maybe pitch, but walk, stop, clovers all do that, including the killdeer, which is a clover. Killdeer has two bands, two black bands. Semi-palm, smaller, and okay. Immature gull, yeah, starling, immature cormorant. This is a double-crested cormorant. That's our typical cormorant around here all year. Lots of them breed on Poplar Island now. 30 years ago, they were rare. This is a juvenile. Juvenile double-crested cormorants are later on the upper chest and neck. Our winter cormorant that we get occasionally here is called the great cormorant. It's from Europe for the most part. But we do get a few here in the bay, and they're later from here back.
What is double crested? What's a
It
crest?
actually has a little tiny crest. This is being a juvenile, I won't show it, but it has a little tiny black crest on each side of the head above the eye.
Are those the ones they have at Poplar?
Yes, absolutely. Lots of them. Little bowtail.
Oh,
This guy was sticking his head up, and it took us forever to figure it out. Yeah, I heard green hair, that's right. They're stripier all the way down in the back, and wonderful, if you get an up-close picture of them, wonderful buffy edges to the feathers.
And do they have the stripes down the chest too?
Stripes
That's
down the
what was
chest.
on our duck, okay.
When I got all excited about it, I thought maybe they have a bitter.
That, I told you, I thought it was a bitter too.
Yeah, it sure looked like it from the head up, from the chest up, yeah, absolutely. Little green hair, it's a small hair, right, chicken size almost. Summer plumage, Laughing gull, right, giggle gulls to the
Giggle
kids.
Yeah.
Okay, they lose their black head in the winter and have basically no black there. The back of a gull is called the mantle, and in this case, the mantle is kind of a charcoaly, light charcoal color. That helps give it away as well, and very noisy.
Yeah.
We saw lots of those. This is, I'll do this one, I'm keeping an eye on the time, there's got some other stuff to talk about. This is actually not, this is iridescent. This picture doesn't do it quite the justice. It's usually a little darker looking than that, but in the kind of light that Wayne was able to find, it shows up, the iridescent shows up well. But the head is still, yeah. In a thicker bill. It's related to blackbirds, though it isn't one.
Is it called?
That's cowbird. This is a brown-headed
That's the
cowbird, that's the male.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So that looks.
Females are grayish all over. Unlike many blackbirds, the bill is almost finch-like, it's kind of conical. Whereas a blackbird bill is much longer and straighter. Orioles, by the way, are blackbirds.
And to our eyes, would it, oh, here's some clue?
No, that one,
Okay, so this is special in this picture. Oh,
yeah, due to the light and possibly the
Yeah.
cameras, they tend to be kind of dark. You can have all of them you want, and they're parasitic, they lay their eggs in other birds' nests, and here in the east, they're not too much of a problem, it's just a nuisance, and when they fly, you see it's darker looking. This is our resident chickadee all year long, our migrant, Carolina.
Carolina.
Carolina chickadee. The edge of the bib in Carolina tends to be a little bit straighter and a little bit smaller than the black cap, if you're from areas where the black cap used to occur. Otherwise, they look a lot alike. Let's see. All right, how about you? This was at Foreman's Ranch. One of the first birds we saw there.
Is it?
It's a warbler.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yellow?
Oh, it's the word that we can't pronounce.
No,
It isn't
not the
that,
parrot.
is that guy?
What color is the throat?
Oh, yellow?
Yellow.
Golden? Yellow throat.
It's the common yellow throat. It's a raccoon mask at all. It actually has a nice little white line above that. Witchetty, 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 right?
Okay.
Yeah. Leather eagle and molt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And young with a white tail.
Yeah. We didn't see many of these. This one actually we saw when we were at Point Pleasant. And it's a fairly tall bird, kind of egret size, but bulkier and shorter leg, very dark, and has a long curved bill that it uses to probe
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Is it Rocio?
glossy iris. Glossy
That's
iris.
far away.
Right.
Yeah.
Pretty long look, you know. Between the picture and the scope, I think most of us got at least a glimpse of it. All right, who's he? That's Krusty. Yeah, great crested
I
flycatcher.
love this hairdo.
Don't you love him?
Yeah, I really do. Old wiry hair.
And these around, there are lots of them, anywhere near woods or anything like that, you're like over here, they're small and very good surfers. It's a whole nester, likes to lie in its nest with snake skin if they can find one, which they think is a deterrent for predation. But that's Krusty. There's Krusty again. It's a rather handsome bird when you get the light on it right. Kind of grayish above, light yellow below. The tail has a hint of rufous in it, and so do the wings and the crest itself.
Why do the kids love him? Because of his call?
I think the kids like it because of its call, and maybe they just got the name right. I don't know.
It's witchetty.
You know, witchetty, Krusty. Oh yeah, guess he spilled beans on this one, but yeah, this is the Baltimore. We did get distant but decent looks when we went to our Oriole quest to Peter Stifles and Hope House, and they were calling quite well, quite a ways. We had a walk at Pickering Creek on was it Tuesday? Was it last Tuesday? What was that?
And last Tuesday we went.
Yeah. Yeah, that was Thursday. When did we do the monitoring trips?
It was May 2nd, we went to the baseball game, that's the only one.
Oh, that's the one.
How did Pickering Creek walk was
What's Tuesday, yeah, just this week, Chris, it's only Thursday.
No,
Yeah.
that's why.
Massively we're having fun, we can't get in the garden. This is the Baltimore Oriole, at Pickering Creek at the end of our bird walk at 10 o'clock or a little later. There was one, I've never seen one there, but there was one singing all the way around the parking area and sitting right on the treetops. Amazing. I don't know whether it's gonna stay or not. Good place. There he is again. And
Oh, I didn't know that.
this guy coming out of the nest hole. This is the way bluebirds used to nest. Yeah, coming out of a hole. This is a young one that's got speckles on the breast. It's a thrush. Robins, bluebirds, and other birds that are plain breasted as adults still have spots on the breast when they're young. And almost all thrushes are spot breasted, even some as adults, like wood thrush and so on.
That's a perfect.
This is one of the ugliest I have ever seen. And it's not a bluebird, though it is supposed to be blue. It's probably a first-year bird, yeah. This is the indigo bunting. And this is what a lot of them will look like in August, as they start to molt into a much drabber plumage. But this one is the other way around, and it's coming into its plumage this year, probably a first-year bird last year. It's a fish with a conical bill. It was trying to sing, if I recall. I just started doing a very good job of it. Let's go on. There's that dragon bib from Carolina. We saw a few of these. I can't hear them, so I couldn't point out a lot of them.
Isn't that the cedar wood? No, is that the cedar wood? We saw, there was a whole bouquet of them.
Yeah, we had a bunch. Yeah, that was at Point Pleasant, I believe. And I had a flock of 40 or so there.
That's it.
Still couldn't hear them. Might have been at home. Wasn't okay. You can't see it in the picture well, because the tip of the tail is pale,
Yeah.
bright yellow. And this crust, it's just an interesting bird. Very high, wheezy call that, as I say, I can't hear it.
That's
One of two of them, we had a two-tanager day, right? At Pickering Creek.
Yeah, that's summer.
This is the summer, right? You can't see it quite as well. The wings are all red. So it's red all the way around. Also, the summer tanager has a bigger bill than the scarlet. I don't think we have a scarlet picture here, but we saw both of them that day. It's crusty again.
That's the one.
Yeah, he's a cute little guy, not very common around here. We got this at Point Pleasant Farm. And this is the little blue heron, as opposed to the great blue heron. It doesn't have the streaking underneath. It's more uniform overall. And when you see the two together, you wouldn't mistake them for anything else. The problem is the young birds are all white, so you can confuse them with egrets at that point. Mallard, cardinal,
Osprey.
osprey. How about that?
A warbler.
Yes. It's a warbler.
That's a
No, I don't know.
We had it a couple of places, but I didn't know we heard it. This picture may have come down from Bear Swamp. It's a trilling kind of song. Okay, this is a pine wood. And the pine tree is. Okay. Various streaking. This is a male, so it's a little bit brighter yellow. The females are duller overall. 2 wing bars and some streaking on the side, and a nice trilling call. Mine's so chilly. This is a great picture.
Great
The next one is too.
Awesome.
This is also.
We took this picture down in Bear Swamp.
Yes.
All right, and if that's unfamiliar, although notice the bright white in the tail. Okay, if that's not familiar, how about that?
Oh, wow.
Picking up a worm.
It's in the.
That's the one we can't say.
That's right.
That's the one we can't pronounce.
Prothonotary.
Sounds like.
Prothonotary worm.
Is that what you get when you cross a butterfly with a bird?
Yeah, yeah, made very well. Gorgeous picture. And also down at the wildlife management area.
And how perfectly positioned.
Yeah. Sitting up there well. This is a true red-headed woodpecker.
Yes.
Okay, as opposed to the red-bellied, which is not red all over the head. And bright white in the wings. And there's a little colony of them there, and we were lucky enough that they showed up after I found them.
Why do they call it red belly when there's no red on the belly?
There actually is. Not on this one, but it's not very prominent. It's not very common. It's kind of a light rust.
Picture by your feet.
Yeah, and some don't have much at all, females in particular.
Never built it.
Another big billed tanager, that's our summer again.
Ooh, turkey.
TV, all right, about this guy. Small bird, likes to scrub, saw it and heard it. Heard it when we saw it, in lots of places,
Oh, is that
especially in
here?
the
Oh.
Yes, white eye, white eye,
Yeah, that was the dinner for you.
Yeah. chick of the woods, chip, likes scrub, likely to hear it everywhere. How about that, Iris?
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
really got it.
Yeah.
Are those squirrel?
Oh, yes, oh, yeah, this,
Oh.
all the birds we saw were not transient migrants. There's a reason for that, and I'll take a second to explain that. According to what Walter Ellison told the Talbot County Bird Club earlier in the spring, the transient migrants, especially the small songbirds that migrate up from the tropics up to their northern breeding grounds, tend to skip the eastern shore. When we see migrants here, they're migrants that are arriving for summer breeding. And what they do apparently is not to cross the bay down in Virginia, but to cross the bay in the upper parts up around Cecil County, and then come over and actually reverse migrate and move back down. So we see very few transient migrants like black-throated blue warbler, black-throated green warbler, some really colorful birds. If we're lucky, there's a fallout or the weather blows them our way, that's so much the better for us. But in fact, most of the birds that we saw that were migrants are here for the summer. So they're summer resident breeders, and that includes this guy. He's a fairly early arrival, by the way. Here was one that departed early. Common feeder bird in the winter. Right? Conical bill. Yes, it's a seed eater, it's a sparrow, right? And
Which one?
this is, yeah, the white throat.
Oh, you
White throated sparrow. Okay. Nice picture with the yellow, of course, this was taken in the hand. This is the white striped version. I don't think we have any tan stripes in the pictures. We have a nice bluebird day in a couple of places, certainly up at my farm. And see how beautiful they are. How about that? I heard somebody. This is the orchard. Unlike the Baltimore, it's more chestnut, usually darker, where the Baltimore we're looking at is mid-back here. He's facing us, but situated away. And you can see that there. That would be a brighter orange, the male Baltimore, or the female would be quite yellow. A goldfinch, a tag horseshoe crab, and this Wayne got acknowledgement for sending in the tag number here, so I'm gonna pass that around. One you're probably not gonna see a lot of, but down in Bear Swamp in the early spring is quite visible. We were a little bit late for it. We did get pictures of it. And I'll just tell you, it's the yellow-throated warbler. Likes pine trees, fairly common breeder up in the New Jersey area and in the pine barrens there. But moves through before the leaves are out in our part of the world. And also, interesting enough, while it likes pine forests in many places, it also is partial to sycamores along watercourses. You can see it along some of the rivers as well. Beautiful birds are beautifully colored. Here's a bird that's changing into its summer breeding plumage. It has the black wings. It's yellow as the feathers are being shed and they're wearing, and the yellow is beginning to show up. That's our goldfinch. This is what your feeder birds might have looked like a couple of weeks ago.
Scruffy.
Yeah, very scruffy, but it'll be nice and smooth like that first picture we saw. There's that white-throated sparrow. There's the chipping sparrow with the white and black on the eyes, and handsome little brown cap there. Small sparrow, chip, 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 chip. And another bird that was leaving, like the sparrow was leaving. So we saw it up at the banding station. That was the last one we had. Tiny little guy, smaller than a chicken. Smaller than a chicken. Slightly.
Like scientific.
But your field mark, this mark in the back here is nice if you can see it. The best mark is the ivory. And it's very, very active when it's not being held. Very, very active in the
That's just the
foliage.
nail polish.
Yeah, this is the ruby crown. Ruby crown. Yeah,
Ruby
these-
crown.
Ruby crown kinglet, Kinglet.
It's so pretty.
Very, very active in the foliage. I tell my classes when we see them in the wintertime, if you see a small bird futzing around in the foliage, really active, flipping its wings all the time, and never sitting still, it's a kinglet. There are two species, and this is one of them.
Or
The
it's
other
a
is
second
golden.
grader.
So this goes far north,
Yes, this breeds in the north,
but then it comes back here.
in the wintertime. It's a winter resident, just like that white-throated sparrow. They breed north of the US, just north of the Canadian border, in bogs, and then further north than that. And then spend the winter here until about the middle of May sometimes. There's the kinglet again, you can see a little bit of the crown. They seldom raise it, but when they do, it's pretty striking, because it's really neatly colored.
How are you guys,
See how small it is relative to the hand.
like you say, how is this, how are you able to catch the bird?
Oh, this is a hand
Banding
extension.
Oh.
What the heck?
Like reach up and they
And they were being netted. There's one of the woodpeckers that's out there. This is the northern flicker, also called used to be called the yellow shafted flicker because there is a salmon shafted, better known as red shafted flicker out west. And for a while, they were considered separate species. Where this bird is yellow, the other bird is salmon. And that includes the wing lines, which you can't see here. Also, the red shafted flicker has a red mustache, whereas the yellow shafted males have a black one. But they have been found to hybridize often enough that they are now all considered one species, northern flicker. So this is a northern flicker. There, she's pulled the wings out a little bit, and you can see the yellow underneath. That would be salmon in the western species. You see the yellow in the wings as well. Okay, let's see. Yeah, there was a good shot of the yellow. That would be salmon. Really, really great pinkish salmon. Okay, I think used up the time that I want to use.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah, looking down in the bluebird box and swallows.
But they were the white.
Yeah, this is the white navel.
Yeah.
I was distracted by a couple of flycatchers at that point. So that's give you some idea of what we did see, and some of you who know the names now, and the names, getting the names familiar makes the bird more familiar. So hopefully that's been a nice introduction to what we've got going here. And now I'm going to switch over, talk a bit in the next hour or so about strategies and saving migrant birds, but also some other aspects of birding that I think you should read the course with this information and everything else. We're going back to PowerPoint here. We'll get the slides going again. One of the themes that we was kind of in the background all the time in this course has been the concept of ecological succession. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing again, but rather to remind you that out here, especially in agricultural areas, we have succession that begins with a bare field or a fallow field. In a year or two, it becomes grassland, and then eventually some shrubs begin to invade. Some of those shrubs might be pin cherry and other types of trees that had seeds in the seed bank in the soil that were still dormant, even though the soil was farmed. And then these then become invaded by young cedar trees and eventually pine trees, which grow in the abundant light that's available there, and they grow quickly. And also, there's a fair amount of nutrients left over in the soil. So they shoot up, and you get a pine forest in something between 20 and 100 years, depending on where you are. If the pine forest is not itself harvested commercially or otherwise managed, the pine forest will evolve into a community of hardwoods. Used to be oak hickory, but we're losing some of our oaks now to a variety of diseases and borers and so on. And even that forest is changing now to a more beech maple type forest. And who knows what will happen after that. We're talking about timeframes of 100 to 200 years. What Joe Ruth calls old growth forest. But in ecological succession, you can set it back. And very typically, and often out west, fires would be the way in which succession would be set back to an earlier state. Fire suppression has been one of the big problems we've had with managing the forest, particularly in the western U.S. where it's been dry the last many years. And there's a whole bunch of stuff built up in the forest floor that's timber, tinder, you might say, and unfortunately those fires can get very hot, reach the crowns and spread and decimate the whole forest. Here in the east, we didn't have as many of lately started forests, and we've still been suppressing fire because we've got development and farming in the proximity of forests. Also, the whole eastern forest at one time had been removed for agriculture, for charcoal, and so on. And so most of the eastern forest is probably less than 200 years old. Might be considered old growth, but it's still not the way it was originally.
The sycamore belongs over here at the end of the story.
Yeah, very much so. And, there's a whole bunch of other trees that go along with this sort of thing. But we often talk about managing succession, and there's a reason for that. And that has to do with the bad news. In 2019, Rosenberg and a number of other birders from Cornell and Smithsonian and National Zoo, American Bird Conservancy, all of these authors are, for the most part, very good birders, came out with this paper in Science magazine that's getting a lot of traction because of such statements. And without going through all the details of what's going on, they studied records on the past 48 to 50 years from such things as the Audubon Christmas count, Christmas bird count, North American Breeding Bird Survey, eBird when it came online in 1990, about 2006, I think, and several others, including some radar work that was done in the last 10 years. And they concluded from all that integrating the information that they had, they have a net loss of North American birds of about 29%. That is about 3 billion birds lost from the North American population. This is not species, this is overall populations. And that paper has not been called into question. It's probably very rough, but still, it's the best estimate we've got. 2.9 million was the actual number they used, and here by category are some of the birds that have been declining or changing. Eastern forest birds, the so-called forest interior dwelling species, the FIDs, have declined about 15%. But if we go down the list here, the two worst are the two we were looking at a lot. Grassland species, that includes species of the prairies, but it also includes the northern bobwhite, eastern meadowlark, and other birds that occur around here in open fields and edges, and shorebirds, 50% loss.
So this is not all because of habitat loss.
Well, yes, most likely it is, and that has to do with the fact that there's no place for shorebirds to breed in. They like to breed on coastal areas, and guess what? We like the view.
Yeah,
And so
we breed on
yeah,
coastal areas.
they're rapidly diminishing both in North America, and since many of our shorebirds migrate from South America, there's problems down there as well. The good news was that wetland birds, which includes ducks, actually increased. And that's another story that I can't get into here. I talked about it a lot in the first semester class in winter. But it has to do with the recovery of one of the largest duck factories in the entire world, the Prairie Pothole region in the Dakotas, Saskatchewan, Alberta, parts of Minnesota, over Montana. That whole region was left over by glaciers as they receded. Big chunks of ice left little depressions that fill with rainwater and snowmelt in the spring, and the ducks come in and feed on the dead grasses in there and breed. And probably in the Chesapeake Bay region, 90% of the ducks that winter here bred in the Prairie Pothole region. And there was a concerted effort working with the landowners out there and the federal government together, not through regulation, but through cost sharing, to convince landowners not to drain for agricultural purposes, prairie potholes, and were compensated by cost share money to pay for that. And the result with Ducks Unlimited help and a number of other organizations, that whole coalition really changed the situation, and we get a gain
Yeah,
of birds.
but there's also competition with the fear of mosquitoes. They don't want standing water, so the Maryland comes flying through spraying everything. So who's in charge?
That's right. That's right. And it's an attitudinal thing, and you're absolutely right. They have mosquitoes out there too, but because they got lots of birds, they've got things to eat them. Lots of swallows and other types of insectivorous birds live out there as well. This kind of partnership, I'm going to come back to in a while, but it shows that it can work, and it's not just an ecological law. The Farm Bill was key back in the 1980s to actually finding the cost share money to enable farmers to be paid for this.
Let's hear Senator Leahy.
Yes, so our current Farm Bill still has provisions in it for wildlife protection, but it could be removed. And we'll see. But nonetheless, working with the agricultural community was one way we reversed that trend, and there's a lesson there, I think. Okay, we had this picture, I think, showing up and running as well as an example of migrant songbirds. This is the wood thrush, and I'll stop it when it gets to its wintering grounds again. It winters down in the Yucatan and down into the southern Central America, in parts into Mexico. That's its main wintering area. If we let this go, you find that the population flies across the Gulf of Mexico, arrives at Louisiana, Arkansas, and Texas border. There's a very famous migrant fallout there along, I think it's called High Point, and so on. They land there, but they're kind of exhausted. They rest shortly and then fly inland to actually do most of their feeding and getting their energy driven, right? And then they come up to here. But as I said, for, like our wood thrush, which is a summer resident here, there's a nice one singing near my yard, and probably elsewhere. There were several at Atkins Arboretum here a while ago. They come up this part of the bay and then come back, rather than fly across the bay. So, and their main corridor of migration, and this is true for lots of migrant songbirds that continue on to northern breeding grounds. The transient migrants we tried hard to see, but only got a few. Red-star crabs, a yellow warbler too. For the most part, they move on. So there we have them going up to their breeding grounds in the summertime. This is in June and July. Breeding at this time of year, fairly densely, relatively common in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, the Alleghenies. And then it looks like the population kind of shrinks. What really happens is the birds stop singing, and since these are based on eBird observations, people don't see them. So it's an artifact. And so there are fewer eBird checklists that time of year. The birds actually are probably more abundant because there are young ones as well, but they don't show up very well because none of them are singing. And then they start to move down the Alleghenies and Appalachians. Unlike some birds that stage on the coast, that's what makes Cape May, New Jersey so special. They stage on the coast and fly out over the ocean with a cold front passing that kicks in northwest winds. Wood thrush doesn't. Wood thrush continues down the mountains and crosses the Gulf of Mexico back into the Yucatan. Nonetheless, that's kind of a migration pattern that you're seeing. Wintering in the tropical areas and subtropics, migrating up into the temperate areas to and generally apparently exploit the longer day length and more productivity, but seasonal productivity of these higher climates, all the way up to the Arctic. That seems to be kind of why birds migrate and what they're trying to do. Here's the wood thrush shown by MODIS data. I went through a variety of ways we track migration, and one of them were these tiny little transmitters that were put on the backs of birds, hooked around through the legs, not over the wings, but through the legs. And these are tracks of birds, in this case a wood thrush, wood thrushes that were tagged up in southern Canada and near Toronto, and here are the tracks of several of the birds as they flew south. Many of them disappeared at the Gulf of Mexico. Either the transmitters were lost or the birds succumbed or whatever. A few got into Florida, and also in this region here, we don't know what happened in Cuba, largely because there are no receivers there to track these birds. But a few got all the way to the Yucatan, just as the eBird records show. Remember these little guys?
Yeah.
These things weigh less than a gram, and there's one attached to the back of an ovenbird, and there are some of the towers that receive these signals. The birds get close enough, these are transmitting codes, the transmitters pick them up, and then the computer analyzes to what bird it was, and so on. A super kind of band-aid, if you will, but one you can track more or less continuously. This is the Lotus project itself. It's part of Birds Canada, but we are also participants of it. And I'm going to stop this slide here to just show you one other thing that Lotus is revealing to us. Let's see, I need to go here, and I need to go here. Now, I've already pre-programmed this because it's rather confusing and it doesn't get any better. But basically, we're looking at birds that were transmitters were mounted here, southern Canada, north of Lake Erie, not too far from Hamilton and London, Ontario. And I'm going to blow this map up now to get where they are so you can see what's going to happen here. And I pre-programmed for 3 years of wood thrushes being tracked. The first one's a little messy, but we'll just go with it, showing the birds being tracked from this station here in particular, moving around. The dates now are into September, and they disappear. The birds have left. Those that still had transmitters on, this is still running. This is January, February, March. They're down in the Yucatan. All right. Coming around April, we start to see them coming back. Some birds were tagged on the Gulf Coast, and they're arriving now in this same region here. They're actually showing the species some site fidelity in terms of where they're going to breed. And now we go on, that's May 18th. We go into June, new birds are tagged. We're now in the breeding season. This is July 10th. They're a little behind us in terms of breeding. But they start to move around after the blood. The young are given these transmitters when they fledge. So they're not done in the nest, they're done just as they get out of the nest. And they start wandering around. And when one tracks, which I can't do here, look at that busyness. This is right before they leave to go south. So this is at the end of September, late September. If one could track the individual tracks, which one can do, I'm not going to do it here, you can see that they're actually moving from where they were tagged, which is generally being wood thrush, in small forest patches. They're moving out of those forest patches to early successional habitats nearby. The young are actually, if you will, capitalizing on the productivity of those ecological succession, early successional states habitat. It means those grassland and scrub habitats are not only important for birds that would breed in those habitats, but for FIDs, for birds that breed in forests, and the young birds then move over and begin to forage before they leave. So it's a really important fueling stop, if you will, for the birds before they migrate away.
They have the same fidelity to go back.
Yes, they do, and the tagging has shown that. In addition, bird banding will also show that. You can recapture birds that come back, especially if they've been color-coded, so you can really identify them well. Here they are returning for the third year, and once again, as the young birds are tagged, they begin to go throughout the area here, exploiting new habitat, not necessarily where they were breeding before, but new habitat for getting ready for their fall migration. Lotus has shown us that that is what's happening. Before, you couldn't really tag a fledgling bird and expect it, one, recapture it all, at least until the next year if it returned, survived and returned, but two, just to get it again in that same area, in the same habitat, or different habitat. You just couldn't get the kind of detail that you needed. So Lotus has enabled us to do that, and it shows the importance of early successional habitat, not just for grassland species, but for other species that may not breed in such habitat, but would exploit it because it's more productive for them before they migrate away. It's really important for migrant birds to see that. Okay? All right. So,
Yes, it's great for us to be able to see it, but if you don't actually care about birds, legislatively or public policy wise, you can't get it out of the small confines of you birders.
yeah.
So, what do we care? It's a bird. 20 million died. Oh, too bad.
Well, the horseshoe crab is a good example. We'll talk about that a little bit coming down. But no, I'm not going to turn, red-dyed conservatives into, birders unless they want to. And there's plenty of them out there. So we are a community just like any other community, and we have a voice. And we need to make sure that we don't just sit on our hands when it comes to opportunities like this. The Farm Bill is a good example. I sent out a note to our congressman just last night asking them not to remove the wildlife provisions in the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill's a big clumsy thing.
It's huge.
So it ain't easy, but one does what one can. All right. Here. A couple of bird examples. I'm going to give you of birds we didn't see, but we heard about. But here's what we did see. We saw lots. This is the semi-palmated sandpiper, not plover, but sandpiper. And this bird is, as you saw, this bird, as you saw, is really common now on Bombay Hook and along the Atlantic coast. We saw it in lots of places. When we went down to that side beach, we saw a big flock of them all over the place. You wouldn't think they'll ever be in trouble, but they're a shorebird, and they are. They have declined a bit. This is a bird that's only 6 inches long. It doesn't even weigh an ounce. But it's a peep sandpiper, one of the small ones, and it's the grayest of them most of the year. This is from a website that talks about their migration and talks about the fact that they breed way up in the green area there in the north. They migrate through this part of the country here, including the Mississippi Valley, but also the Atlantic coast. Our populations actually tend to fly over the ocean after they staged on the coast and wind up some 3,000 kilometers, 1,800 miles or so south in Colombia and northern Brazil. Here's the way it looks when you look at eBird's data for semi-palmated sandpipers. All right, there they are coming up here from here. Let me go, I can't go back. We'll run it again. Here's right now, about the time we went to Bombay Hook. And high concentrations here. This is dark purple. This is the high concentrations. There are a few out in the west as well. But here on the Atlantic coast, they're arriving there. That's an important area for them to forage for small crustaceans and amphipods, copepods, small worms, all that stuff that's exposed on mud flats. But there's where they breed. So they leave here and fly way up here. This is their refueling stop on their way to their breeding grounds. Then as summer goes on, and now we're in early August, birds start to reappear here in some numbers. These are most likely the adults. The adults take turns taking care of the nest, but as soon as the young can walk around, which is only sometimes a few hours after hatching, the adults leave them alone. And they basically harvest all the mosquitoes and mosquito larvae they can get their hands on, bills on, I guess, up in the Arctic tundra. So the first birds that you're likely to see in August as sandpipers along the shore are shorebirds, probably adult shorebirds that are already bred and are now beginning their southern journey. In time, the young also arrive, so that by October we're seeing numbers of young birds as well as adults here. That makes shorebirding really confusing sometimes. Young birds are not well plumaged. And, but the challenge is there. And by then, those young birds hear their adults down here in the northern part of South America and Brazil. So I'll just we'll run this right around, not the whole time, but just a bit to show you Here's their wintering range. Then they fly up.
I see them in Florida too, in the wintertime?
Oh, yeah. You may see a few, but not the numbers we saw. Yeah, you may see a few. A few of the shorebirds, even a red knot may linger in Florida. We've seen them in Ocean City in winter, one red knot. Definitely a mistake, but they do that sort of thing. This is what the bulk of the population is. That's a bird we got to see. I did talk about the red knot in the first part of the course, but I wanted to let you know a little bit more about them. So this is a red knot. It's not banded. Cornell University picture shows the robin red chunkiness of the bird, half-length bill, something like that. Pretty bird, kind of colorful gray and black on the back. It weighs about 4 ounces, or 131 grams if you read this. And this is their breeding rate. There are several races or subspecies of red knot. And they have different breeding areas as well as similar breeding areas but different wintering areas. The particular race we're concerned about is called the Rufa, R-U-F-A race. And the Rufa race, let's start in Patagonia and Tierra del Fuego in the wintertime. Makes a leg of about 900 miles moving up Argentina, then to the coast. Then a third leg, which is 5,000 miles to Bombay Hook, to Delaware Bay. To Delaware Bay. That's on a single flight.
Single tank of gas.
Single tank of gas.
How many times would they make this journey?
They live to about 4 or 5 years old. The bird I'm going to be talking about is moonbird, and moonbird lived to be 19.
Oh,
And made this trip. Right, this is an 1,800 mile round trip. I'm sorry, 18,000 mile round trip. And in the 19 years moonbird lived, it was estimated it flew about to the moon and half again, and hence the name. But this leg in particular, this leg here, leg 3, 5,000 miles, is really critical where they land and where they refuel. It's been shown that, in fact, and I'll show you a picture of one in a minute. Let's just finish this thing. Got the arrow. They breed up here, fly from here to here in 4 legs. They fly back. They stop off in St. Lawrence, mouth of St. Lawrence. They go out over the ocean, so we seldom see them in the fall. They wind up here in this northern part of Brazil, which is an interesting area I may mention at the end, and then fly down across some Brazilian jungles and then the Atlantic again before they get back to Tierra del Fuego. 18,000 miles per year for a bird that weighs basically, what did I say, 4 ounce, 5 ounce.
And they don't have Google Maps.
Yes.
When you say a leg, does it stop at all?
Yes, they do stop. They stop at those points.
But in between,
Refuel. But from here to here, basically no.
they don't stop at all.
That's right.
I think they're on a lot for 10 minutes.
That's right.
So when they're returning, they have a tailwind, but going up, do they
Yes.
have a tailwind also?
No, it's a job. It's a job. And they're also crossing further into the jungle. They're not a jungle bird. They're not going to sit on a tree.
How do they eat?
That's what we're going to look at. This bird was called moonbird. If you want to read about that particular species, it was banded B95 and in 1995, and last was seen in New Jersey on its way to and then on its breeding grounds in 2014. So it's at least 19 years old because it was banded. It was probably a year old or so before then. But anyway, and flew to the moon and back, and then maybe halfway again in that life stream.
Evolutionary.
Yeah.
They give them that.
Pretty amazing. And there, we were at Mispillion, right? And there's the original moonbird statue that was washed away. But because that statue also had B95, the leg band on it as well. And the leg band on moonbird is this one right here.
They never found it, washed away, never.
Apparently not, it was probably destroyed, it's not a solid piece, as you know. And that statue was rebuilt, and that's the one that we saw. We viewed this feeding of the horseshoe crab in. This is what's really important about these birds. Here's a researcher that's holding two roof-foot red knots. One on the left, on his right hand, on your left, is 145 grams weighed. That's a normal or slightly above normal size for the bird. The bird in his left hand or on your right is 97 grams. So it has at least close to 50 grams it needs to gain. Of that 97 grams, what's left of it is some fat. It's lost most of its digestive system. It's all shrunk up to save energy to store fat for the flight. So when it arrives at Delaware Bay, the 97 gram bird doesn't have the kind of gizzard that a shorebird would have that would allow it to grind shellfish, small shellfish and clams and shell organisms. So it eats horseshoe crab eggs, which have no shell, and is able then to begin, because they're rich in fat, to be able to regain its weight and get its guts back, and so that it can eat other types of organisms by the time it arrives on its breeding grounds in the Arctic tundra.
Now, is he wearing a mask because it's COVID, or is he trying to protect himself from the birds, or protect the birds from himself?
Probably both in this case. This picture is a year old, so it may have COVID or maybe bird flu.
You know, that story that you just said, or that truth, out of all the years I have heard about the red knots and wanting to see them because of the connection with the horseshoe crab, I never heard the story that the reason why they were eating horseshoe crab eggs was because they had their digestive system had, just what you just told us.
That's right, it really atrophied. And that tissue was used to build fat and reserves for the flight.
Right, I guess.
Was able to do that. It's not true for all migratory birds, but the long distance migrants in particular.
How is the digestive system, Wayne? Is it just natural?
It's a natural attrition. It isn't all gone, it just simply shrinks. Shrinks and the tissue gets much smaller. There was a paper written by Doug Gill several years ago, or his brother Frank Gill, and he titled it "Guts Don't Fly." It had to do with the migration of bar-tailed godwit from Alaska to New Zealand. He couldn't believe it when they found these birds and found they had basically no digestive system, functional digestive system, but they were able to reconstitute it after they found suitable food and suitable habitat. So that this bird hopefully will regain his 150 grams or so in horseshoe crab eggs. The other thing about the horseshoe crabs, I think I mentioned when we were there, is that the horseshoe crab digs a hole and buries the eggs deeper than these birds can reach. But subsequent horseshoe crabs coming in on the next higher tides and the next full moon dig those up in part as they dig their own holes. And the eggs that are dug up are probably going to die anyway. And so the birds can harvest those without necessarily decimating the horseshoe crab population. But there he's gone. But in fact, there are legislators who say, well, as a result, there's no real relationship between the horseshoe crabs and the birds. There's plenty of crabs, and the birds are the. This is where that is a lie.
Yeah.
This is absolutely critically important habitat and critically important relationship. The birds are dependent on horseshoe crabs to be able to get refueled enough to not only make the flight to the Arctic, but to reproduce and lay eggs and do all that they do up there as well.
What's the status of the crab population?
Crab population is definitely down. Maryland still allows limited harvests of male crabs. New Jersey, I believe, has a moratorium on them, but Maryland and Virginia still allow the harvest, and there was one proposal to allow harvest also for female crabs. In Maryland, there is something to know about Limulus, LAL, Limulus amoebocyte lysate that's used to test for test for contamination of medical equipment. And there's now I think cheaper overall alternative, artificial LAL. But Maryland and Sparta does not allow blood taking from crabs. The crabs are taken, however, instead, they harvest them for bait for conchs and eels.
Oh.
So I'd almost rather have the bloodletting because at least maybe 60% of the crabs that are bled can be put back and live. But if you take them for bait, that's the end. So Maryland and Virginia, at least what I know about it, there's a horseshoe crab coalition that has a website that has current information.
Do we think the population is stable or is there any?
I think, yeah, I don't think it's really known
Yeah.
exactly. They're down, and the knot population is down too. Presumably as a result of that, possibly also some problems on their wintering grounds. So that they're getting double whammy. If you will. But anyway, ducks don't fly, and that's something you can take from the report. Whimperls on the Wing is a nice series of bits that I think speaks to what I'm trying to get across here. This whimperl is a tall shorebird, something like a yellow-legged, longer decurved bill. It is actually a kind of curlew, if you've heard that name before, which have long curved bills and are shorebirds. The whimperl is an East Coast bird here, and it's clearly bigger than a red knot. But the story is pretty nice. We go to this region of the United States, which is called the Georgia Bight. And the Georgia Bight is important because the way the currents are set up, the tide range in the Georgia Bight ranges from Cape Fear, North Carolina, a foot or two, to high tide ranges as much as 4 to 6 feet by the time you get down toward Cape Canaveral. And so there's a tremendous high and low change in the water level, and the low tides, tremendous areas of mudflats and beaches are exposed. So this is a particularly smorgasbord, I guess you might say, for shorebirds to stop over, and so they do. Here's a map of the Georgia Bight area in Georgia, and you may remember some of the names of these places here. Skidaway Island, there's a Marine Research Station there, Wilmington Island. How about Jekyll Island? Okay, you wonder why these shorebirds aren't finding places to stay? Okay, these are all developed, sometimes gated, and there's some left. We're trying to save what we can. But these are the Georgia barrier islands on the Georgia Bight. Here's a view of showing this region here. I circled in red on the previous one, looking down here near. I think this was. Let me make sure I got it right. Yeah, St. Simon's Island.
Yeah.
Okay, this is right here, and move that up a bit, and you can see at low tide the amount of exposure of the shoreline that's there in this Georgia Bight region. Well, enter a whimperl who got telebanded, if you will. He's looking down at a lot of fiddler crabs, which are really abundant in these mudflats, along with other crustaceans, small snails, and worms. This is a real great smorgasbord for these birds, and these birds still have a gut, so they can eat fiddler crabs, or at least the body portions of them, and they gorge on them. And so one of the birds was banded, and they're not banded, but actually a small transmitter was put on him. This bird got the name of Postle, and there he is being released. He was banded. Let's see if I have anything on it. He was tagged, transmitted in 2012 in the spring. There he is being released. He didn't leave until several days later, and he flew nonstop, they found out from the transmitter, 5 days north, or if you will, 3,200 kilometers, that's about 2,000 miles, without stopping. He was perfectly well fueled by the time he left. And so there goes Postle's flight in the Georgia Bight. He made one stop north of the Lake Superior, a one-day break, by the way. not much time to do much eating, and then flew for 2 more days up to help the Hudson's Bay. This is not possible. This is a whimbrel on the nest, showing you the kind of nesting that they do there. And both the male and the female take turns in incubating the eggs. But when the young hatch, as soon as they can move around, they're cute as a button, but the parents leave.
So these are not
Yes.
social animals,
That's
they
right,
don't
yes.
go in groups and.
Oh yeah, there's lots more around this area, but it's not like a coherent flock.
So how old are they when their
Uh,
parents leave?
Less than a day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's their life.
And this is true for a lot of shorebirds. Parents basically are going to head south now and start to tank up for their southern migration. And there's lots of food up here in the tundra. Lots of mosquitoes, mosquito larvae, and they're able to fend for themselves. In fact, for most shorebirds, the young are called precocial. They're able to fend for themselves very well, young for their, old for their age.
And what's their ages?
And songbirds are attritional. 2 different words for you. Attritional means that the parents come and feed them and take care of them until they're well-fledged and move on. But shorebirds tend to be precocial. That's why killdeer, after they nest in your driveway, you won't see the young running around too much anywhere near the nest. They'll be out in the field or out somewhere else. They're running around on their own. The parents are still taking care of them in the case of killdeer. But in the case of these birds, there's almost no parental care at all. Someone asked about predators, and there's a lot of them. There's high mortality, there's no question about it. But it's made up for by the amount of food that the young can get and move on. And so there's our kind of, if you will, from those breeding grounds, they fly back to basically the eastern shore of Virginia in one swell swoop, and then they fly back to the Georgia Bight to refuel for their flights south. And so from the Georgia Bight, they launch out over the Atlantic Ocean and wind up in northern Brazil. And that's where they spend the winters in these estuarine habitats with a fair number of mudflats, and they're able to feed sufficiently and to gain their weight back and maybe some of their gut before they're ready to head back to the Georgia Bight again. And Possum flew back to the same place the next spring where he was married, showing just how important this stopover point is for migrating shorebirds who may be wintering thousands of miles away, but come back to these particular points because the habitat is right for them. And here's one a really incidental and coincidental picture. You can see Postel is in this picture. There's the transmitter antenna. You seldom see that. All right, but there he is, photographed in Georgia just by happenstance. They knew he was there, but picking him out from flocks of hundreds and thousands of windows is something else. And so there's our ground trip. Of course, it's not only, as they say in this thing, site faithful, but it's site dependent. There are 3 other groups of whimbrels, a total of 3 groups of, it's 3 other groups of whimbrels. They've also been tracked, and we know something about their site dependency and their site faithfulness as well. Possum was just one of the examples. So, kind of wrapping this up a bit, what we're doing here now with shorebirds, but it translates into songbirds as well, is trying to link the populations together, to get their whole life cycle, to realize what points in their life cycle are critical to their survival and recovery, and then to try to link up with them, with people who live near those other critical sites, to try to, if you will, emphasize the importance of those sites and to try to stimulate land use change or land use preservation, however you want to call it, to keep those sites important. The Georgia Bight is one of how much more development they can have in the Georgia Bight before, in fact, that site is no longer an important stopover site for whimbrels or anything else, remains to be seen. But we can try to save what we can, or at least what's left. And in the case of populations like this, the Smithsonian and others have a project, they call it migratory connectivity. The connectivity project, there's actually a website about it. And you can see the efforts that are going into one, defining what those critical sites are, and then how to connect them, not only with birds, but with people, so that we can collaborate with people in other countries and other parts of our hemisphere to preserve birds that are, in fact, our common resource. And that's critically important. And here's a group working on a connectivity project down in Brazil, showing not only, I think, the smiling faces and how happy they are, but in fact, the text talks about how important this effort is and how important it is for their training in becoming future ecologists and conservationists as well. And this is in Brazil. We need the same kind of activity here in our own country. And there is something going with that. There's a initiative called the WHSRN, the Western Hemisphere Shorebird Reserve Network, which includes not only South America, but includes the Georgia Bights and the Arctic tundra and other important bird areas in our part of the world as well. The result is that there are 116 sites, the last I read, with 19 partnership countries, including us. And to date, they have identified and are trying to preserve 38.9 million acres of habitat in various important stopover areas in the world. I just read a post the other day from Birds Canada, and they have just pledged in the last year 15 million Canadian dollars over 3 years to support a group called Conserva Aves, Avian Conservation. And they're working with 8 countries in South America, and 4 of those countries to date have preserved 2 million, almost 3 million acres of stopover sites. This collaboration between our country and other countries and vice versa is critical, probably, to conserving long-distance migrants of shorebirds, but also for our general birds as well. And just today, I was reading on a news post in April 2004, there's a WHSRN site in northern Brazil, which is where possum spends his winter. And they've just designated that site. That site also supports human economic activities such as shrimp farming, fishing, shellfish gathering, sea salt extraction, fruit farming, and agriculture. I'm reading from the announcement here. In other words, this kind of activity can still be consistent with community activities, working landscapes. And that's a lot better than saying, you can't do this, you can only do this. It's much better to try to keep the landscape functional and preserved and working so that, in fact, efforts to conserve important portions of that landscape for bird and other conservation efforts are also there. A viable landscape can be economically, aesthetically viable to us and still be economically important for birds as well. That combination of working landscape and conservation, I think, is probably a lot more productive than laws and regulations that simply slap on and close down economic activity. That's my take on it, at least. When we're dealing with songbirds, we're dealing with a much broader front of migration. There are important habitats all along the way of migrating songbirds. Some of them are more important than others, but you're not going to preserve the whole Allegheny Mountain range for wood thrushes. But you can think about conserving land, as Sam Droege wrote. Sam is the bee man at the Patuxent Wildlife Research Center, and he said to participate in conservation of birds is to participate in conservation of land. That doesn't mean you don't necessarily use it. And Mike Parr, who's president of the American Bird Conservancy in Delaware now, notices the fact that you can't protect all habitat. You have to work with landowners in production landscapes. I call them working landscapes, in farmland, pasture, and forest. Work with the landowners because they actually manage much more habitats than our national parks, or even our state parks or our wildlife refuges. Back in the, when I was talking about the Prairie Poplar region, there are more national wildlife refuges per square mile up there than anywhere else in the country, if not the world. They protect only 5% of the prairie poplar. The rest is because we work with the landowners. And the same is true here. We have a biodiversity here on the Eastern Shore that is the result of our working landscape, that we have agriculture here. We have other activities here that historically go way back. And to keep that landscape working means it's not going to necessarily go to development. If farming is productive, farming is economically viable, it'll stay that way. And we can work with the farmers to try to see how we can conserve special places for migratory, well, with other birds as well. That's my take on it. And do you need a better example?
Yeah.
Well, there's my talk on conserving birds, and I hope you've really enjoyed it. We've had some wonderful times together, and I will finish this off just by some other of Wayne's lovely pictures to help you recall a few weeks of really good time.
Yeah.
And I'll just let that run. Do you have any questions or anything else that you'd like to talk about? We have a few minutes here, about 10 minutes.
I have
Anything going
a
on?
question. You were saying you wrote a letter to support something within the Farm Bill or whatever. Can you share any information, things we could do? I mean, I'm not cognizant of different ways legally or politically to support birds.
Right. I'm not a good politician about that. Where the information I got came from the Maryland Ornithological Society, and I'm on their conservation committee. And so whenever an issue comes up, there are people out there who are involved with conservation. And when issues come up, that committee sends out an announcement to its membership. And in some cases, they ask us to send an email to our congressman on the issue. Sometimes they actually take an initiative and comment. And I can send you a link to that.
Okay, yeah, I do support via email petitions and stuff, various issues, but not birds, so
Right.
I would want to do that.
Sure, I can send you an example if you'd like to get in touch with the chair of that committee, maybe. Get something. The other, there was something else I wanted to say that was flitted away from me. It's a local issue. And this is just coming up. In the last month or so, I was asked about this. The Easton Hospital new building
Yeah.
is going to be full of glass.
Yeah.
Or bird,
Yeah.
you've been running into.
And so there were a couple of people who wrote to me and said, I didn't want to get involved with this, I've got too many things on the plate right now. But I did suggest to them that they talk to the Washington College folks, and that there is a website called Safe Skies Maryland, where you can find the latest on what Maryland's law is and other resources, because before the builder starts to put glass in, now's the time to actually try to get their attention. It might cost a bit more, but it's going to be cost overrun anyway.
You
So.
can actually go to county planning commission meetings, and that gives you an opportunity to talk about it, or go directly to the planning commission board and talk to them about the importance of modifying the what the hospital plans are looking like.
Right.
I would add, if you don't mind,
No.
Doug Ptolemy is very big on the homegrown national park. And, I think that's on, what's the website that we see it on? It's at Audubon, or, I think it's Audubon.
Might be.
But the idea there is something that you can all do. You can do it in your backyards. If you have friends who have waterfront property, you can help them understand it. But the idea is that the biggest source, touching on what Wayne was talking about privately owned land, in our country, lawns make up the most acres of anything. And the idea is to start getting rid of lawns and looking at landscapes that are good for the habitat. And there are many, many, many ways of doing that. There is a program going on right now with Shore Rivers and Atkins that I would highly recommend that you participate in. If you belong to an HOA, it's free. And if you're not, it's pretty cheap, like $5 to go to each of these classes that they're sponsoring. You can see it on the Atkins resource page. We're also putting a lot of information on the resource page that goes along with that. In the last e-newsletter that we sent out for Chesapeake Forum, there was a promotion for that program. And if you clicked on the link, it went to the resource page. There is even a PowerPoint there that Atkins is putting on there for me so that people like me can go to our HOA and the board and to the architectural committees and talk to them about the importance of allowing people, because there's been a law passed that says that HOAs cannot restrict the uses of native plant gardens that are good for birds and wildlife. And but this allows us to have a template to go out and talk to community members.
Yeah, I sometimes hear, well, really successful habitat can be really ugly stuff, and scrubby. A visit to Wi-Fi can, I hope, convince you otherwise. It can certainly be managed in ways. It has to be managed, but managed in ways that are both bird and people friendly in terms of the viewscape, if you will. All of those are good. The Atkins program and Eastern Shore Land Conservancy programs are two that I recommend checking with. Yeah. Here's a chance to make a difference right here in Easton. And I didn't talk about bird collisions. That's another threat on migrant birds. But there's actually a federal law in the books at the moment, not passed, that deals with a national safe skies project. The political climate is such, I don't know how much success it'll have, but it never hurts to try.
So for the hospital, you would connect with the county council?
Plan commission. And I haven't seen much on that, so I don't know what that's all about. I can put you in touch with somebody who's interested in this. So we've been a long way, haven't we? On the way to Patagonia and back again. Some nice locations maybe that you've never seen before, and for most of you who are pretty novice at this birding, some species you realize the richness that's out there, seasonally as well as permanently. So I've enjoyed talking with you all and sharing that with you. Thanks very much, and a special thanks to Wayne for the unanticipated and wonderful bounty of
Very nice. Very nice.
Wow.